Hi, today we're going to do a video on solid geometry. The goals today are to be able to look at a three-dimensional object and tell what the name is, and then to be able to match that three-dimensional object to its net. So at the top of the page here, you see some three-dimensional objects, and then you see some definitions here. We're looking at prisms and pyramids. So a prism has a polygon base, like a rectangle, square, triangle, trapezoid, parallelogram. Those are all polygons. And the lateral faces, or the sides, like around the shape, are rectangles. And a pyramid also has a polygon base, but the lateral faces, or the sides around it, are triangles. So when you look at these shapes up here, some of them have triangle faces and some of them have rectangle faces, but they all have polygons for their bases. And a prism, another thing that we might add into a prism is there are two bases. So we could even change this to both bases are matching polygons. So that might be easier for you to think about, whereas a pyramid just has one base. So I want you to think about these and decide where you would put them. Would you put those under pyramid or prism? And then if you will practice naming them. So one way to think about a pyramid are the ancient pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids, and those come to an apex or a point. So this object here would fall into the pyramid category because the base is a polygon and the lateral faces, or what you might think of as sides, are triangles. Where this 3D solid, this one doesn't come to an apex. The lateral faces or the sides are rectangles, and both bases are matching rectangles. So this object here would be a prism because it has two bases that match, and the lateral faces or the sides are rectangles. Whereas this object here is a pyramid because the sides are triangles, or the lateral faces, and it comes to an apex, but it does have a polygon base. It's actually a hexagon. And then the last one here, this one's kind of tricky for people. So remember, it has two bases that match, which makes it a prism, and it has rectangular faces. Even though the bases are triangles, it doesn't come to an apex or a point. So now you want to be able to give the names. So the way you name a prism or a pyramid is you look at the base. So looking back up here, if I click on these, that is a square. So we would call this a square pyramid or a rectangle. It's hard to see exactly what that is because of the numbers not showing. So since a square is a type of rectangle, we could call this a rectangular pyramid. But this pyramid, that has a polygon with 6 sides, which is a hexagon. So we call this a hexagonal pyramid. Over here, this is one of the easier ones. This has a rectangular base, which I can't get to light up. Let me pause for a minute. There we go. This is a rectangle base. So we call this a rectangular prism. This one to the right has a triangle base because both bases match. So we call that a triangular prism. And the one in the middle, we've been working a lot with this shape. That's a trapezoid. So both bases are matching trapezoids, so we call this a trapezoidal prism. So I'm just going to show you some examples of solids and their nets, and we'll practice naming them, and then we'll have you start an activity. So if you look at this next slide here, this shape right here has a rectangle base, just like the shape over here on the left. So we're going to call that a rectangular prism. And this picture down here is what we call a net, as if you unfolded the shape or if you cut your cereal box open and laid it flat. In the lesson today, there's a flip grid explaining nets. That should help you with this. This next picture here, I'm going to slide this next one up. This comes to an apex, so it's like this prism over here, but you can actually see the measurements, and it is for sure a square. So we call this a square pyramid, and this is the net. And this last picture, let me bring this last one in. This one's a little trickier. This has two bases that are the same, like this triangular prism over here. So the bases are the non-rectangular parts. They're the other two matching parts. So those bases are each right triangles. So we call it a right triangular prism, and this is the net of that one. And if you notice on the nets, I always draw the rectangles straight down in a row and put sort of the flaps or the bases, the bottom and the top, off to the side. So if we look at the three nets that I've done, both prism nets, I have sort of a string of rectangles with the flaps or the bases off to the right. And that's it. That's your lesson for today.